Hello. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, friends and colleagues. Uh, I'm grateful that the MSI has given me this opportunity to interact with the scholarly community who are interested in the agrarian sector of the country. And I have decided to speak on a different topic, which you might be thinking why I have chosen this negative kind of topic, dismantling agrarian economy and perpetuating crisis. Crisis and dismantling both are the negative term. Why I have not chosen. My teachers are responsible at the school time. They taught me précis writing. I wrote something. Then the title came from that text, and that is the dismantling agrarian economy. So I'm not responsible. My school teachers might be responsible. I wrote a text, and this title stems from that text. Second thing, why agricultural economy only? Uh, of course, my socio-economic background may be from agricultural background, but I'm not biased towards that. I'm not for the advocacy of that. But I feel I must understand the agrarian sector, agrarian economy. And the more important is about the agrarian sector, the most important thing is the governments and the system always propagating that agricultural development is taking place and farmers' life is improving. But the situation, however, is if we go to the statistic, I'm not generating statistic. Whatever the statistics are available on the public domain, on that basis, I have developed this paper, this presentation. So the statistics available on the public domain tells us that whatever the consumer is paying, the end consumer is paying of the agricultural products, the farmer is getting 10 to 23%, and rest of the amount is going to the intermediaries and other persons. So farmers share of his product is merely 10 to 23%, whereas in developed countries it is 64 to 81%, depending on commodity. So this is the most important thing. We are talking of the agricultural development, but at the same time, the farmer's lot is not improving. The second important thing is uh, farmers are committing suicide. Why a person is committing suicide? Farmers did not commit suicide during the most difficult days of the feudalism and colonialism. But now, in the independent free India, in a democratic society, farmers are committing suicide. There might be something seriously wrong. What is that wrong? When I see the farmers' suicide number, it is far greater than the killings by the terrorists and the COVID-19 pandemic. It is greater than that. Whereas the scholarly community has not undertaken much research on the farmers' suicide incident, whereas we are focusing so much on terrorism, so much on the COVID-19 pandemic. So why farming community is so neglected in the scholarly community? Why the farming community, though the propaganda and the promotional literature and data are showing the agricultural situation is improving, but the farm and beneficiary is not the farmer. So why this is happening? So I try to investigate it, and I try to reboot and revisit the uh, agrarian discourse on agrarian economy and reboot the agricultural policies of the system during the post-colonial period. So just try to reboot and revisit the power this agrarian economy discourse. That is the thing I have done in my presentation. So when I start with the presentation, there are certain questions in my mind. Well, the agrarian, when we try to understand agrarian economy, there are certain philosophical explanations, ideological explanations. The Marxist uh, radical ideologies are having a different perspective of agricultural economy. The liberal have a different perspective. The technocratic ideological situation has a different understanding of agrarian economy, whereas the evidence-based data-driven, the technocratic approach of the empirical reality is different. And sometimes we may challenge the validity and the accuracy of the data and how data are being generating. That is a serious question. So there is a need of serious research on the agrarian economy. The second question, what is the dialectics of changing cognitive basis and empirical evidence? Is there some dialectics how our thinking is going on one direction and the empirical reality is going another direction, or whether there is some convergence? This is the second question. The third one, if we go to the history, in the long evolutionary process since the colonial days, proletarianization and pauperization of the countryside has taken place. In the countryside, during the feudal period, there were certain persons, they were dependent on agriculture, they were doing the commensurate some manufacturing activities and other allied activities in the agricultural sector. But when industrialization started, they become pauperized, they became poor, and some become proletariat in the sense they migrated to the cities and they started working in the industrial sector. So they came from the agrarian sector, from the village community, and they become proletariats in the urban areas. Then another question which came into my mind is the commodification of agrarian economy instead of a way of life. Traditionally, agrarian economy was a way of life. It was not merely a commodity, but in the long evolutionary process, it has become a commodity. Another one is the diminishing importance of agrarian economy and commensurate culture is being evolved. The importance of agrarian economy has diminished, and the services sector and the industrial sector gain prominence, and the culture has been created accordingly to justify the industrial sector, to accelerate the process of industrialization and the services sector. And then another question which is also in my mind is traditional balance has been disturbed and untenable attempted new balance. The traditional village community society, there was some balanced life. Everything was balanced. The agricultural activities, then allied activities, and the related cultural and the entertainment kind of activities. So it was a sort of autonomous life in the village. And that balance has been disturbed. And the new attempt has been uh, uh, made to create a new kind of balance. And the last question, which is also in my mind, is search for sustainable, inclusive model beyond the segmented approach for overall peace and prosperity. So, if we want a sort of sustainable, inclusive model, then we shall have to think about our past model, how the balance was sustained, but now we are emphasizing on the segmented approach. We are taking one aspect and ignoring other aspects. Like we are talking of the agricultural production to increase the production and productivity. We are not concerned what the health hazards it is creating through the use of chemicals and like this. So we are not having a holistic approach towards this. So then you may ask a question. What is the agrarian economy? What are the components of it? So this is the basic question which you might be having in your mind. The agrarian economy has so many components. The first component is farm. What should be the ownership of the farm? How the farm is farm ownership is fragmented because one person is having his farm in the 2 3 places, and it's a fragmented, whether there can be some consolidation kind of thing. Then the acquisition of land for public and development purposes. So the one component of the agrarian economy is the farm. The second is the farming. What should be the method of farming? Whether what kind of mechanization, use of inputs, improved variety of seeds, and or we must have organic farming. So the second component is farming. The third is farmers. What should be the condition? What should be the way of life farmers can live? Whether farmers are getting fair deal or whether they are having the opportunity to live a dignified life. So the farmers are the third component of the agrarian economy. The fourth is the corresponding manufacturing base. In the agrarian economy, agrarian mode of production, there was a traditional manufacturing base that was in the village itself, and whatever the related instruments and appliances, they were manufactured at the village level or the nearby area. That was the corresponding manufacturing base in the agrarian economy. Then there was a composite socio-cultural life within the village or the surrounding village community. So they have a particular socio-cultural life. And this was life in the autonomous village republic or the rural sector as the lowest link in the stratified order. So in the past, what we call agrarian economy, it was the autonomous village republic. Whereas in the new system, new order, we have created the agrarian economy as a rural sector, and the lowest link in the stratified order, a sort of hierarchy has been created in which agrarian economy is at the lowest level, and then there is the industrial sector, services sector. So the balance has been disturbed. So the components of agrarian economy are different. So these components have been practically dismantled while we are talking of the agricultural development. The growth is increasing in the agrarian sector, but the balance has been disturbed. Some of the components have been dismantled. So the agrarian economy in the holistic way is not functional. That balance has been disturbed. Then what is the historical perspective? Historically, there had been ancient autonomous village community. And this is not my contention. Mahatma Gandhi and the whole national freedom struggle is around it. So before the feudalism, there was some kind of autonomous village community and what we call the village republic, what the leaders of freedom struggle tried to define it. Then the tribalism to feudalistic order and rise of caste stratification and uh, intermediary internal elements in the society. So over a period of time, the caste system, the feudalistic order, these things came into the village republic, and a different kind of feudalistic society has been generated. Then the colonialism and dawn of industrial economy, when the colonial rulers established control over the Indian society or the subcontinental society, they started the industrial activities, manufacturing activities in their home country, and raw material supply from the colonies. Then the perspective of national freedom struggle, revivalist approach, and the reconstruction strategy. During the colonial period, there were three forces: feudalistic system, because in the Indian subcontinent, there was a British India and the princely India. So the British India was directly under the colonial rule, colonial control, the British control, whereas the princely India were having independent so many states. So the feudalism and the colonialism simultaneously were there. So the freedom struggle generated a different kind of perception, and the essence of freedom struggle was revivalist approach. The revivalism of freedom struggle is different from the revivalism of some kind of rightist kind of forces and the religious kind of forces. The revival of freedom struggle was revivalist approach of the ancient village republics where there was an autonomous community, and the reconstructionist strategy, and they talked of the reconstructionist strategy. You can study any leader of the freedom struggle, and if you try to understand the gist of freedom struggle, that is the revivalist approach and reconstructionist strategy. Then the feudalistic structure, colonial policy and practice, and national freedom struggle interface. So during the colonial period, all three were having interface. National freedom struggle was against the feudalistic structures and the colonial practice, policy and practice. And that is why during the freedom struggle, the, there was a strong feeling against the feudalistic order. Different sessions of the Indian National Congress, there were so many resolutions of the land reforms, agrarian sector, and all that, and also against the colonial rulers. So there was some interface. We were having interface during the colonial period. Then re-articulating visioning of national freedom struggle and as a guiding force for post-colonial India. So it was expected that the whatever the visioning has been articulated by the national freedom struggle, it will be a reality during the post-colonial India. But what happened during the post-colonial India is somewhat different. It's not exactly the legacy of the freedom struggle. Something different has taken place. Why that something different has taken place? Then if we take up the post-colonial period in different phases, the freedom struggle, the vision of freedom struggle was different, but in the post-colonial period, the first phase was to introduce certain kind of structural changes and the dawn of green revolution, farm-centric approach. During the first phase, that is 47 to 60s, it was farm-centric, the abolition of zamindari system, the land reform, certain kind of land reform, and there was a increasing food shortage for the increasing population, and to meet the food shortage there was a green revolution during 60s. So that was more for the farm centric approach in the first phase. The second phase was 60s till 80s. The policy has been shifted from the farm centric or that some having structural change in the agrarian sector to the rural development, then the poverty elevation, what the Garibi Hatao slogan was there, then some kind of redistributive measures through nationalization of nationalization, land ceiling legislation, and these were introduced. So it becomes farming centric approach instead of the farm centric. Then the third phase is expansion of extension services and agricultural growth to strengthen food security. During 80s, again the policy shift has taken place and it has been emphasized that farmers should be educated in the agricultural activities, in the agricultural practice, and there must be some system of food security in the times of crisis and emergency. So the approach has been shifted to create a food security, not merely to provide food to the produce agricultural products for the through the green revolution, but there must be some food security to have a storage of the food. Then the fourth phase was the agricultural development commensurate with overall policy of LPG. The liberalization, privatization, globalization took place, and the different kind of agricultural development policy has been introduced to suit the overall policy of LPG. And the fifth phase become the farmer centric, because earlier policies and strategies were farm centric or farming centric. But the fifth phase is having a distinct thing, that is the farmer centric. And during this time, first ever national agricultural policy has been introduced. First ever. So after independence, nearly for more than 50 years, there was no national agricultural policy at all. Farmer was not in the picture. They were concerned about the structural things or the increase the production to feed the increasing population. And that was not the farmer's need, that was the national need. So the farmer was not given sufficient attention, but during the fifth phase, the farmer-centric approach has been adopted. Then the sixth phase after 2014. And um, after 2014, it has been pronounced, it has been maybe rhetoric or reality that has to be seen, but it has been pronounced that the farmers' income will be doubled by 2022. So this is the post-colonial period in different phases. Then what had been the problem of all these phases? The ideological ambiguity and policy inadequacy. The ideologically, there is no clarity, ambiguity. It reflects the ambiguity, and the policy was not adequate enough to address the farming sector, the agricultural sector. So the ambiguous ideological orientation to attain socialist goals in quasi-capitalist mode through technocratic intervention. So it becomes a sort of amalgamation of all the socialist ideology, then capitalist ideology, and the technocratic approach. So there was no clarity of one ideological wanted to achieve the socialist goal. The methods adopted were capitalist, and then the technocratic interventions have also been contemplated. So there had been some kind of ideological ambiguity in all these phases. Then focused on mixed and the dual economy to attain inclusive agrarian economy till 90. The focus had been we wanted to have best of everything. Mixed economy, we wanted to have the different ideological goals wanted to be achieved. Then the dual economy, simultaneously we wanted all these things, and it was expected that we will be able to achieve an inclusive agrarian economy. Then the policy shift to neoliberal globalist model since 90. And thereafter, the transition from neoliberal globalist to neocon nationalist orientation since 2014. After 2014, the neoliberal globalist orientation of the agricultural sector has also been given up, because the overall policy shift has taken place, and that we, in academic language, we can call it neocon nationalist orientation of the policies. Then the production and productivity increased, but the community life commensurate with agrarian economy has been dismantled. So what is the result of all these different phases and the ideological ambiguities and policy inadequacies? The production has certainly increased. It is appreciable, and there is a visible increase in production and productivity. But the community life, which was commensurate with the agrarian economy, has been dismantled. Practically, it has been dismantled. And the farmers went to the distress, the condition of distress. Then the development model so evolved through all these phases is entirely different from what envisaged by the national freedom struggle. So what my contention is, the development model which we have pursued during the post-colonial India is altogether different from the development model which was envisaged by the leaders of national freedom struggle. Because national freedom struggle model was the revivalist based on revivalist approach and reconstructionist strategy. But in the post-colonial India, we have adopted a different kind of path, and the different kind of path led us to the dismantling of the agrarian economy. I mean, the agrarian economy as a way of life. Agrarian economy is not as a producing some commodity, but agrarian economy as a way of life has been dismantled. Then agrarian economy has been a continuity in change. Whatever the dismantling of agrarian economy is, it is a continuity in change. Because during the colonial period, first Royal Commission on Agriculture was appointed. And its intention was not to improve the conditions of the farming community, but to establish the control of the colonial rulers over the agrarian sector and make it suitable to the colonial interest. So the Royal Commission of Agriculture was appointed, and it was decided that the agricultural records must be up to date and there must be control of the colonial rulers up to the village level through different methods. And all these things were there in this commission. Thereafter, the National Commission on Agriculture was appointed in 1970 uh, under the chairmanship of Ram Nivas Mirda. I think he was the chairman of our MSI as well. So after the independence, there was no adequate attention to the agrarian sector, agrarian economy, except to adjust some structural adjustment and improve the agricultural production and productivity. So the first time after more than 20 years of independence, National Commission on Agriculture was appointed. And this commission recommended several measures, some educational kind of things, agricultural extension, and large number of recommendations. And most of these recommendations were accepted and implemented. Then in 2000, National Agriculture Policy has been introduced. And with this policy, it has been emphasized that there must be, if we want to have full potentials of agrarian economy to be realized, we must emphasize on the infrastructure. And there must be increase of investment in agrarian sector, and the credit must be streamlined. And the credit facilities should not only be provided by the public sector institutions, but also the private sector institutions. So the National Agriculture Policy is a comprehensive measure for streamlining the agrarian economy. Then the National Commission for Farmers was appointed, what we call the Swaminathan Committee report. Uh, you might have heard so many movements are going up. The peasants are sometimes agitated, sometimes mobilized, sometimes putting pressure on the government. And they are saying the Swaminathan Commission report has not been implemented. It must be implemented in toto fully. And these demands are going on. So this kind of struggle by the farming community is going on, and the commission has the recommendations of this commission have not been implemented fully. Then the committee on doubling farmers' income was also appointed in 2014 when the new government came. Of course, the government's approach is somewhat different, the neocon nationalistic framework, but this is the welcome measure to have a committee on doubling farmers' income. And this committee has produced the 14 volumes. It's a huge work they have done. But what will be the net result, that is yet to be seen. But government has announced that it will making the Herculean effort to double the farmers' income by 2022. But now I think government will have an excuse that we have planned to have farmers' income double, but COVID-19 pandemic has disturbed our all the plans, and we don't have that much resources. We could not implement. There might be so many excuses. The COVID-19 has given so many excuses to the government. So I don't think this doubling farmers' income by 2022 will take place. Then, apart from these different 5-year plans and annual plans, because sometimes there were no 5-year plan, there were plan holidays, sometimes rolling plan. After the emergency, some rolling plan system was introduced, then the annual plan system. So in all, there were several annual plans and the 12 5-year plans. In all these plans, different aspects of agriculture were emphasized. But the first plan was the most important plan, first 5-year plan, in which the investment agriculture was of the 31% of the total outlay. Thereafter, the proportion of the share of agriculture agrarian sector has uh, reduced. It did not reach up to the 31%. So all these plans, they have emphasized one aspect of the agrarian economy, one or the other aspect of the agrarian economy. All these committees, commissions, and the 5-year plans, they failed to develop a holistic approach towards the agricultural development, towards the agrarian economy, what the freedom struggle has envisaged. That has not taken place. And that is why I am saying the agrarian economy has been dismantled. Then whatever the agricultural development programs and measures and strategies have taken place, we can regroup them for our understanding, because large number of programs have been undertaken, right from the humanitarian measures and some employment generating measures, and NAREGA and the rights of the people, forest rights, all so many large number of measures are there, and we can regroup them into humanitarian relief measures in natural calamity and other crises, like subsidy, loan waiver scheme. So many measures have been taken. They may be in one category, that is the humanitarian relief measures. The second one is ameliorative measures to improve the farmers' conditions, to improve their condition, to credit facility, to subsidize fertilizers, then improve seeds, and like that. All these things were ameliorative measures of the farming sector. And then the redistributive policy. There had been some kind of redistributive policy. Of course, the land reform was a state subject, and the land acquisition, land ceiling, land redistribution policies had been different in a different state, in Kerala, Bengal, Jammu and Kashmir, and in Rajasthan, Punjab. All these states, there are different trends. In Jammu and Kashmir, somewhat successful. Why? Because the religious factor is there. Because of that, in Kerala and Bengal is the different because of the progressive and left-oriented governments, and in other states it's the different thing. But some kind of redistributive measures have taken place. Then the extension services and educative measures, agricultural extension services up to the village level, lowest level, and the agricultural extension officers, and then other officers, and all these measures to provide technical aid, support, assistance, the expert advice to the farming community, and all these measures have undertaken, which can be called in the educative measures. Then the institution building for implementing policies and programs. The institutional measures like the cooperative system, cooperative banks for the credit system, other institutions to uh, like the agricultural mandi system for the marketing, or so many other institutions, large number of institutions have been created to help the agrarian sector. But The problem with all these had been that there was no holistic approach in them. They were all segmented. If you are, suppose you are providing some assistance to the farming community, improved variety of seeds and fertilizers. But the side effect of fertilizers will be the inorganic agriculture. It will not be the organic. So it will have a health effect on uh, the human being. So we did not adopt any kind of holistic approach. All the measures have been in the segmented approach. Then impact and consequences. What have been the impact of all these measures, whatever the measures, the reports, recommendations, strategies, programs, major changes in land use pattern. This is visible. You can see in any state, any part, even at the lowest level, village level, land use pattern has changed. Metamorphic change has taken place. Nature of appliances, the mechanization kind of thing, the traditional agriculture with the blocks and uh, something like that, and the traditional uh, carpenter used to make some appliances, then the mechanization, everything has taken place. There is the tremendous change in that. And the farming practices and cropping pattern. Farming practices also changed. And then the cropping pattern. There is one crop in a year, two crop in a year, three crops, cropping intensity has increased. Then the well, earlier there used to be the wheat crop, then there is another crop like rice, and then the sugar cane and the vegetables. So cropping pattern and the crop intensity is changing. So there is a visible tremendous change in this sector. But has it improved the lot of the farming farmers? That is the question. So the impact is, you can call it a positive impact. Whether it is a positive or not, we will assess it later. But this is the impact. The expansion of all these things has taken place, and the net result is the agricultural production and productivity has increased. The second impact is expansion of irrigation methods, credit financing facilities, and extension services. This has also contributed in the agricultural production and productivity. There is expansion in Rajasthan canal and the small Chambal area, command area, and then there are tube-well irrigation system. And there is so much expansion of all these things. Then the credit financing facilities, almost it has been made mandatory for the banks to give the priority sector in the agrarian sector loans, advancing loans, and then the extension services. So cumulatively, they have contributed to the production and productivity. All these measures. So it seems very impressive achievement in the agrarian sector, in the agrarian economy. So significant agricultural production and productivity, that's true. But what happened with it? What went by beyond that? The result has been the emergence of politically powerful, albeit less organized peasant groupings, vis-a-vis organized corporate lobby. At the government policy level, two strong lobbies started functioning. The corporate, well-organized corporate sector pressurized and influenced the government to pursue the policy in favor of the corporate sector, manufacturing sector, industrial sector. At the same time, there is a political powerful and less organized peasant groupings. So the politically, numerically strength in a democratic system, numerically strength of peasantry and the farming community, the member of farming community is greater than the organized corporate sector numerically. But they are divided. They are not well organized as the corporate sector is organized. So this is the visible trend we are seeing in the post-colonial India. That though the political powerful, because of politically powerful agrarian community, agricultural community, the farming community, but they are not organized. And sometimes the political leadership, but the state make them unorganized, disorganized, keep them divided, a sort of divide and rule policy which was in the colonial period. I think we can observe to some extent in the post-colonial period. So this is also visible. Then the increasing importance of corporatized manufacturing and services sector. So if we compare the overall the economic situation, economic development, economic growth, the importance of corporatized manufacturing and services sector has increased. And you see the economic development, we as economists have defined that if the proportion of agricultural sector is declining and the proportion of manufacturing sector and services sector is increasing, that is the economic development we as economists have defined. It means complete neglect of the agrarian sector. Why we neglect it? If agrarian sector's contribution is increasing, agrarian economy means agriculture plus allied activities, agro business, agro industries, all these things are in agrarian economy. So the importance of agriculture is decreasing. It means the economic development that we as economists had tried to define, whether it is economic development and not, I doubt. I will come on it later. Then the capital, technology and management become sole determinant against the land and labor. Is the primary level thing that there are five factors in production: land, labor, capital, management, technology. We have been teaching at the school level even. The importance of capital, technology and management has increased because of the influence of the corporatized manufacturing sector and services sector, and the importance of land and labor has been decreased. The millennial and the Gen Z have been conditioned as if the farming community and villages are places of ignorance and backwardness. So, because now in the post-colonial India, three generations are having interface. The we as the generation of the post-colonial India, then the millennials after those who born after 80, and the Gen Z, those who born after 2004 or 5 or whatever it is. There are different definitions. So these three generations are interacting in the society. And the Gen millennial and the Gen Z have been conditioned that uh, agricultural sector and the farming community and villages are the places of ignorance and backwardness. Whereas what Mahatma Gandhi used to say is, I will take you to the Asian Relations Conference just before the independence in April 1947. Mahatma Gandhi addressed the world leaders in the Asian Relations Conference, and he told them that from outside the villages look like dung heaps. He used the word dung heaps. They are places of dirt, death, and disease. You will not get fascinated by it. But if you scratch below the surface, you will find the best species of humankind. So visit the village. So that sort of idealistic approach Gandhi had. Whereas what we have told during the post-colonial period, that the villages are the symbol of backwardness, the farming community is the symbol of backwardness, and this type of conditioning has taken place. And now the sons and daughters of the farmers, of the farming community, they have that sort of attitude of contempt that the farming community is the signifies the backwardness and ignorance. They are not enlightened one. That sort of situation has been created. So the naturally there shall have to be dismantling of the agrarian economy. Then problems and challenges. what has been the problems and challenges? The market access and its biases, irrespective of significant increase in agricultural growth. Number one is the market access. Of course, government has a policy to have a market access to a minimum support price and so many measures they have been talking. But I told you in the beginning what a end consumer pays of a price the end consumer pays for paying for an agricultural product. The farmer is getting only 10 to 23% of that price. It means where that rest is going on, nearly the 77% or the 90% where that difference is going on. So the market access, we, if we talk in the government policies, but there are still there are biases in the market system. And then there is the second one, the terms of trade and the market mechanism are tilted towards corporate houses and services. This is obvious. If you are having experience of the agrarian sector, if you have lived over there, you can visibly experience that the terms of trade is not in the favor of agrarian economy, and the market mechanism is tilted towards the corporate houses and the services sector. And the commodification of agriculture instead of a way of life. So the agriculture has been commodified, and it has not remained the way of life. It's just a commodity in the market, like other manufacturing things. You are manufactured things like car, scooter, fridge, AC, just like agricultural product is like that. But it was a way of life. It should be way of life commensurate with the agriculture uh, uh, lifestyle. So that has not taken place. Then the continuing agrarian crisis, political conflict, social turmoil, and thereby cumulative agrarian distress led to farmers' suicide. And if we talk of farmers' suicide, and we are saying that there is the agrarian crisis, political conflict is there, social turmoil is there, how farmers are committing suicide because of that? Our National Crime Record Bureau is having diverse picture of the farmers' suicide. Crime Record Bureau is having different factors of the suicide, like family disputes. The, uh, there is some conflict within the family. There is a stress. I think agricultural community might be having less stressful life than what is the urban people are having. So why when urban people are not committing suicide because of the stress, why the farmers are committing suicide because of that? Why this distress is there? But our National Crime Record Bureau is giving different factors: the family dispute, the dispute between children and the uh, parents, and sometimes there are some psychiatric problems. So many factors have been mentioned, but the main factor is farming community are distressed, though the agricultural production has increased. So it seems in contradiction that when agricultural production and productivity is tremendously increasing, why farmers are committing suicide? Something must be wrong somewhere. So we as researchers, we are undertaking research on terrorism and counter-terrorism. So many research in most of the universities we are undertaking. We now, after the COVID-19, we are undertaking research on the health component, health aspect. But very little research has been undertaken on the farmers' suicide, though the number of farmers' suicide is greater than all that. So farmers are committing suicide. That is a strange thing despite the agricultural development. If it is the agricultural growth and development, then farmers should not have committed suicide. It means there is a dismantling of agrarian economy, so farmers are committing suicide. And how can we have reconstructionist strategy for that as envisaged by the leaders of freedom struggle? They talked of the reconstructionist strategy. You may ask a question whether there was a village republic or not in the past. This may be the question. I may be idealistic, but not only Mahatma Gandhi, other leaders as well, Annie Besant, Dadabhai Nauroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Mahadev Govind Ranade, all these leaders have in-depth study of all these things, and they talked of the ancient village republics where there was autonomous life, peaceful life, self-sufficient life. So that should be revival. The revivalism does not mean the religious revivalism or the Brahmanic revive the Brahmanic order or something like that. The revivalism of the national freedom struggle is altogether different from the revivalism of the present day right wing forces. The, the revivalist approach of national freedom struggle was secular by nature, and it emphasized the autonomy of the village community life, and that is why they talked of the reconstructionist strategy, and that has been ignored in the post-colonial period, and that is why the agrarian distress is to this extent that farmers are committing suicide. But further investigation is required for that. Then there is the need to devise inclusive policy, legislation, and strategy for meaningful agrarian. There must be some holistic kind of policy, not one policy how to increase agricultural production, how to have a different variety of seeds. That is the segmented. Through that, you cannot give a complete life, total life, holistic life to the farming community to save them. Then there is urgency to restore and enable political and socio-economic rights of people in the countryside. Because in the post-colonial period, the rights-based approach was not envisaged. Though in the constitution there is a provision of so many of rights, only the rights-based approach was articulated and pursued during the UPA regime, two UPA regimes, and it was uh, articulated by the National Advisory Council. And so many rights like right to employment, then the result of Narega and all these things came into being for the agrarian sector, for the agricultural community and in the villages. Then the Forest Rights Act, right to information, right to education, right to food. So many rights-based approach has been pursued. But just giving rights in the act is not sufficient. Rights not only must be restored, but they must be enabled that people in the countryside, people in the villages, people in the agrarian economy, they can exercise their rights. They must be enabled. And how rights can be enabled, that must be thought of properly. Because just restoring rights in the constitutional on the paper in a document is not going to otherwise constitution is the best document if uh, ideals of the constitution might have been would have been achieved. In the preamble everything is very clear what for we are here, what is our vision. So how can we enable that the preamble of the constitution and the rights of the people? That is the question, and there we must investigate into, and we shall have to take some intensive holistic study for that. Then the conclusion. Agricultural development is aimed at increase in production and maintain order rather than delivering justice to the farmers. This is the first conclusion. Because whatever the agricultural development we have pursued during last 73 years is just to increase the production to feed the increasing population or maintain the order. Because sometimes some of the programs have been introduced to maintain the order because of the political necessity. In a democratic system, political leader is compelled to pursue a particular type of policy. Indira Gandhi gave a slogan of Garibi Hataao. It was not for the Garibi Hataao. It was their utility and liability to have a Garibi Hataao. So the agricultural development, sometimes the loan weighing. So these are the political rhetorics, and these are they are compelled to do it. But there is no justice to the farming community. Justice in the sense there must be some holistic approach in which the market should be pro farming community. That is not there. And there must be rationalization of the credit system. That is not there. What is happening is in the government, for instance, in the government records, what they are saying that every year the government has given so much credit to the farming community. What they actually did, actually what happened is there was is the record keeping kind of thing. It's a bookkeeping kind of thing, because earlier year there was some loan was advanced, then interest was added into that, and that has been carried forward to the next year. So that in every year you are adding the credit, that we have given so much credit to the farming sector, too much credit to the farming sector every year. Otherwise, in one year you have given some loan, and then farmer has not paid, so you added the interest, and the next year again you are saying the same loan. So it's just on the paper. In practice, what is there? So this practice of, so if I should call it a manipulative practice, I am not wrong. This should not happen. It should be clear cut. This much loan has been given to the farming community this year, and the next year the carry forwards must be kept in the minus. Then it can be the real credit. So there are certain kind of manipulative kind of things are there. So there's no real justice to the farmers. Then the next is it reflects segmented approach instead of holistic human development by maintaining autonomy of the village life. So the whatever the approach we have adopted, I have repeatedly told it that the segmented kind of thing. You are focusing one aspect of the agriculture, it is having side effects for the another aspect. Then it is having side effects for the farm sectors, for farm land. It has a different impact of the ancillary activities in the farm. So the totalistic approach, the holistic approach has not been adopted in the one segment. They are talking of the development, and the statistically proving that we are going for agricultural development. Then the agriculture as a way of life in the countryside has been dismantled through agrarian change and rural development. And it is not that the sort of culture and the uh, language has been created. Suppose Gandhi and the leaders of freedom struggle always talked of the village. Village is a dignified word. It's not the a negative term, where the rural is a negative term. How we have constructed the language through the influence of the World Bank, IMF, and the other influences, our intelligentsia has used this type of terms. Why not we call the village as an autonomous unit? But there was a bias in the development model to have a sort of a linkage network from the village up to the top. So the autonomy of village can be settled, and village cannot remain autonomous. If a village is autonomous, then it can be a very uh, serious challenge to the rulers. So they wanted to create, centralize the power in some way through the linkage kind of politics, linkage type of uh, concepts and theories. So that has happened. So the agriculture has not been considered as a way of life, just as a commodity produced in a particular sector. The agrarian economy became subordinate to the industrial and services sector. It is the well obvious. The, we are saying the contribution is less, it is further declining, then we are having economic development. These kind of things being taught in the schools and colleges we have been teaching. So the agriculture has been subordinate and the sign of backwardness. Then the village became satellite of urban areas, and a result of it reflecting urban splendor and the rural backwardness. So the net result of it has been urbanization has been created, because those who were uh, displaced in the villages from their traditional manufacturing and the artistic or the ancillary activities, they migrated to the urban areas, and some of them started living in the slums and created urban splendor through high-rise buildings. Everything is there. The urbanization has taken place, and it has been our minds have been conditioned that the rural areas and the villages are a kind of sign of backwardness. If you are urban in the urban area, then you are the forward looking, you are the modern. That sort of mindset has been created, whereas leaders of freedom struggle, their perception, their vision of was different. They talked of the cities and the villages. Cities are just a center for exchange of goods and services. They are not supposed to be the center of power and wealth, whereas the urban areas became evolved over a period of time as the center of wealth and power, not made the places of exchange of goods and services. So these are the conclusion, and now what can be the way ahead? The COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of the development model in coping with catastrophic situations. The COVID-19 breakup had paralyzed in every walk of life, even in developed countries, not only in a developing country like that of India, but every country is paralyzed. Every development model is paralyzed. So this it means something is seriously wrong with the development model which we have pursued uh, during this last century and this century. So the agrarian economy has re-established credibility to save the society from its collapse. What impact the COVID-19 had in India is large-scale displacement and the labor mobility going back to their villages. You have seen in the TV, in the media, everywhere, what type of facilities we have gained. The unorganized sector labor, the labor which was creating the urban splendor, went back to the agrarian sector in the agricultural economy. And it means agrarian economy has a resilience to absorb that these human beings, because in India, even there are alarming statistics. Some agency has produced some statistics. The modern slavery, there are 46 million people are under the severe condition of modern slavery, and out of that, 18.6 million are in India. So such a huge number of people are living in the modern slavery kind of thing, and most of them are in urban areas. This is not my statistics. It's there at the created by some international organization. And 50% of these modern slaves are in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So this kind of situation is there. Only the agriculture has potentials and credibility to absorb these kind of shocks, and these shocks like the pandemic or the catastrophic, agriculture has resilience to withstand it. Otherwise, our modern development, the industrialization and the services sector, they don't have that sort of resilience. So agriculture established its credibility, that agriculture has capacity to absorb the people who are displaced, who are victim of the catastrophe, who are the victim of the emergency. So that has been proved by the COVID outbreak. You can see it. It's a visible. An alarm bell for both scholars and policy planners. This situation is the alarm bell for the policy planners, and because the policy planners shall have to pay adequate attention to the agrarian economy, and for the scholars, they shall have to focus their studies on agrarian economy more than the industrial and services sector and other aspects of the economy. So this is the alarm bell for both. So the COVID something, because our prime minister used to say there is opportunity in every crisis, every catastrophe. So this is the opportunity that scholars and policy planners should focus on the agrarian economy. Then the agrarian economy is not merely a subject of agricultural economics, but other social science disciplines must also focus on it. Because normally in our knowledge structure in the university system, agricultural economics means it is in the economics. Political science has nothing to do with the agriculture. When farmers are committing suicide, it cannot be answered in the economics. So you shall have to go for the political studies or sociological studies why farmers are committing suicide. So the agrarian economy must be studied by all the social science disciplines. So it means the studies on agrarian economy must be broad based, and for that there must be some measures at the level of the those who are responsible, the agencies which are responsible for the education, higher education and research like UGC and other agencies, ICSSR, ICHR, or other, even I must say ICA, CMR, or agricultural research, and all that. So when I say the agriculture sector has been neglected, then somebody may argue with me that we are having separate agriculture universities, a National Council of Agriculture. These council and agricultural universities, they are studying scientific aspect of the agriculture, not the sociological, political aspects of the agriculture. So they are contributing to the increase in production and productivity. That is the national need. That is not the farmer's need. Farmer's need is how farmer have his well-being, how farmers can exercise his rights, how farmers can live a dignified life. That is the farmer's concern. But that is not the investment for the farmer. That is investment in the agriculture to feed the increasing population in the country. So but that we call it in the investment in the agrarian sector, in the agrarian economy. Anyway, that is the imbalance. So we shall have to broad-base the studies on agrarian economy. Then the emerging threat of environmental degradation, pandemic and infodemic will re-establish the credibility and necessity of agrarian economy with a village community life. Not only COVID, as I just told, the COVID outbreak has re-established the credibility of agrarian economy, but the environmental degradation, the infodemic being spread like anything, and the pandemic, they are re-establishing the importance of agrarian economy. And even in the cities, people, the rich people, don't want to live in cities. They are having farmhouses beyond the cities because they are panicked by the environmental degradation. They don't want to live the environment, degraded natural environment. So there is a sort of reversal kind of trend is visible. The people are moving back from the cities, not in our developing countries, but in developed countries, it is visible. There is a reverse migration kind of thing taking place. Cities have become the centers of manufacturing and the services sector or exchange of goods and services. That sort of, uh, uh, I think, place the cities are getting, not the center of power and wealth. So that has already started happening in the developed countries. The reverse kind of migration. People are going from cities to the villages. They are living there, and for some work they are coming in the city for the daytime and then going back in the evening and living their life. So I think someday that will happen, and we should be prepared for the revival of the village community life. We should accelerate this process that the village community life can be revived so the agrarian economy can be strengthened and there can be really dignified life for every human being. Then, well, I would like to conclude by saying a plea for re-establishing balance among different sectors of the economy, various sections of the society, and diverse sets of political opinion ideologies. Because there are different sectors. I'm not undermining the services sector or manufacturing sector or the construction sector. All these sectors are important. But there must be an adequate, a reasonable, judicious balance among these sectors. If the manufacturing sector and services sector are dominating and agricultural economy, agricultural sector is being neglected, that should not happen. There must be balance in different amongst different sectors and various sections of the society. And various sections of society means like various castes, various religious groups, ethnic groups. There are different sections of the society, rich, poor, tribals. So there must be some kind of balance in the society. It does not mean that we should neglect the tribal people. We should neglect the people of one caste and like that. There must be balance among the various sections of the society. And then there are various political ideologies, like left ideologies, the technocratic expert approach, the liberal ideologies. There are different opinions and ideologies sets. There must be balance in them. So all kind of balance, balance in different sectors of the economy, balance in different sections of the society, balance in the political opinions and the different ideology, and such an inclusivity can be realized by recognizing and re-establishing agrarian economy as a way of life in autonomous village community. And this balance can only be sustained in the agrarian economy if we recognize it as a way of life, not as a commodity. Agrarian economy is not a commodity producing kind of thing. It is a way of life in autonomous village community. Or if we don't recognize it, then the crisis will continue, the turmoil will continue, conflict will continue. And if you will ask me who has given this kind of model, I think the best model we can evolve through the convergence of three great leaders of freedom struggle, Mahatma Gandhi, Bhimrao Ambedkar, and Chaudhry Charan Singh. If we have a convergence of ideas advanced by these three leaders, I think we can have a proper kind of balanced model. Mahatma Gandhi talked of the reconstructionist strategy, revival, uplift approach. Then Chaudhry Charan Singh called of agricultural development because after all agricultural production is needed to feed the increasing population, all that, and the social balance Dr. Ambedkar has talked of. So if we combine, we have a convergence of these three leaders, I think most viable, most uh, optimized model can be evolved through the, because you will ask me what type of model you have been giving. That is the obvious question. If we don't recognize this, that Mahatma Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Chaudhry Charan Singh could give a model of convergence for the agrarian economy as a way of life and to have to mitigate the crisis, conflict, and turmoil in the society, then if we don't recognize, then keep on grappling with the conflict, crisis, and turmoil in search of elusive peace and prosperity. There cannot be peace and prosperity. The conflict, crisis, and turmoil will continue. The gated colonies in the cities and high-rise buildings, they will never be able to mitigate the crisis. You shall have this kind of community life, this kind of agrarian economy as a way of life. Of course, the services sector is important, not at the cost of uh, services sector, not at the cost of manufacturing sector. It should be Technology is important, but what technology, how to use it? We can use technology for agricultural production. We can use technology for human well-being. So I'm not denying the technological advancement. So if we are developing a kind of model on the algorithm and the STEM kind of things, most of our technocrats are doing uh, the computer science students and those who are involved in these things, that is relevant, but that is not sufficient. That cannot lead to the peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity will remain elusive unless or until we have a community life. The whole world is realizing after COVID, the realization has been strengthened, and now the model is given by the three great leaders, thinkers, and if we have convergence of these one, I think there can something meaningful may emerge, and for that there is a need for further study, further research, and broad basing the agrarian economy studies and research that should take place. Uh, I don't know who is listening my voice, who will be able to do that, but there is a need. There is no financial cost if we are having agrarian uh, study of agrarian economy in the political science contents or the sociology contents in the anthropology or the other disciplines. There is no financial cost just to keep them in the contents of the study. So in this way, a sort of sensitization towards the agrarian economy will re-emerge. Sort of empathy towards the agrarian economy will emerge. And if sensitization is there, interest is there, a sort of empathy is there, I think meaningful research will advance without any financial implication. The humans will do themselves. They will be mobilized. So I think it will be, I must stop here. There might be so many questions and uh, queries, and of course, uh, some of my friends may like to grill me, and because I try to provoke them so much, having a sort of out of the box explanation of certain things. So, with these words, I would like to thank MSI, the team MSI, for giving me this opportunity, and I am really happy that MSI is organizing webinars on such topics. Uh, Now I would like to thank and give to our moderator to raise the question, ask the question. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Mini.